everybody, it's Steve Alcanator. Welcome to Circle of Brilliance. Today we will indeed finish up our discussion on positivity and negativity. I've been putting the recordings up, and it's interesting how many sessions we've been talking about this. And as we've been having our discussions, my thoughts have returned to something I was in the throes of doing just before COVID began. So I wanted to revisit that with you guys today and talk a little bit about how this whole positivity and negativity sort of thing might fit into that, and ultimately how this might actually fit into your businesses and the kind of services you happen to be providing. So do you remember a couple of years ago, we were about to launch what we were calling the Oracle of the Self? And we wanted it to be a physical meeting that you would have locally, where you would look at your own change grids and do some peer group counseling and all that kind of support sort of stuff. You guys remember all that? Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Silence is agreement, just so you all know. Well, for obvious reasons, that went to the wayside because COVID certainly interfered at the very least and ultimately rendered it impossible to do. And so we thought about doing it as kind of a virtual sort of a thing. But I wasn't really jazzed about that. To me, the real point of having any kind of like a peer group counseling activity is that you really can get people together and you really can help them to talk about whatever their issues are, share with one another, talk to one another. And the problem with doing it virtually is that you can only really have one person talking at a time. I mean, I know there's these whole classroom capabilities where you can divide people into smaller groups, but quite candidly, that just I don't know, seems like a heck of a lot of work to navigate, and how do you facilitate all that and all that. So I much prefer, call me old school if you must, I much prefer getting a group of people physically together, break them into little groups of 4, let them have their discussions, give them some exercises, and then walk around and give them whatever input and feedback you feel is useful to them. So I've been kind of wondering if we'd even ever have the opportunity to do that again, if so, when, and what form might it take? So here's where my thoughts are right now. I think that in over 55 communities, it is more than time that we could be doing such a thing. In Sun City West itself, we are 89% vaccinated, fully vaccinated, even with boosters.
Wow.
So that tells me that whoever these 11% are have made their own decision, and they aren't probably all that likely to want to participate in what I'm about to describe based on the rules I'm going to put in front. But so I don't know that I really need to worry about them. And I think that even if I said to everyone who was coming, look, I don't know who is and who isn't vaccinated. I'm not going to ask who is and who isn't. I'm not here to police people and their choices. This time of year, we can all be meeting outside anyway, so we can do this out on the lanai or on the patio. You know, we don't need to be in an indoor space. So I'm saying all that just to say that I think we've got some pretty positive conditions that allow us to have these physical meetings once again. Thoughts about that before I kind of jump into more detail around it?
Yeah, they're doing that now in the villages, actually. I used to do quite a bit of training out there for the college. So the
Mm-hmm.
villages has a center where all of their education, so the charter school for the high school kids, and any so-called what do you call those continuing education
Sure.
courses for the
Yep.
residents,
Yep.
they all go to this one place and take their courses. So
Yep.
the instructors from the college still go out there now.
Right, right. And we have the same thing here in Sun City West. We call it RISE. It's community, it's continuing education. It's run by Arizona State University. And they put together a whole catalog of courses that we can all take and get a lot of this. We pay a flat rate of $60 a year to go to unlimited courses.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty sweet. Pretty
Yep.
sweet. Now, this is all an adult community, so we don't have anything like a charter school that would have kids come to it. So we know if we ever see anybody under the age of 55, somebody is visiting mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. So,
Right, right. They started a charter school out there because for anyone that like works in the villages,
oh,
and
that's very thoughtful.
right, and their kids and everything. So everything is like centrally for they get preferences if you work in the villages and you're not at the age to actually live there.
That's
And so
really
they,
nice.
yeah, so they school them, and it's a great charter school. Like it's a waiting list to get into it. So they put a lot of attention into everything out there.
Right, right, right. That's interesting. The population of the villages right now is well over 100,000 people. So
Hmm.
that can certainly, you think about the number of employees that would be working there, and they are probably, having school age children. So that's a really thoughtful thing to do.
Yeah, and they've been getting
Um,
colleges. The colleges have been receiving lots of phone calls, which is how I heard about it recently. Of people wanting classes and connecting now, and so Florida, states of Florida had already lifted the mandate.
yeah, 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 yeah,
So
yeah.
they're looking forward to connect now. So that's why they just restarted continuing education courses for the residents.
Very interesting. Yeah, they said that according to the population studies, the official population of the villages is 79,000, but that's only based on year-round residents. So how many people do you think are snowbirds? Because obviously they're claiming their official residence elsewhere
Right,
and coming down to the villages. So I'll bet during the winter months, the school months, I'll bet that population is half again as large, if not more.
right,
So
right. Because they're
yeah,
covering, 3 counties, and
yep, yep, yep.
that
Very good.
swells up. The closer you get to Orlando, there's people going in and out of Orlando back to Marion, Sumter, or Lake County.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Hmm.
it's very interesting time, I think, to do this because people are looking to connect again. They're
Right.
Zoom fatigue. They have all this technology, and the older populations, even in medicine, they're like, okay, we understand the benefits of telemedicine, but we want to go back to the doctor.
Yeah. Yep. 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 I'm even feeling that way today. It's been 2 years since I've physically seen the doctor. And for the most part, I don't have any need to go anyway. But if I do, it seems to be met by telemedicine just fine. But you do get to a point where you go, like, I'd like to see a real doctor so I can point to where my pain is. Anyway, now there's going to be a lot of things to discuss around this, but let me just say that this conversation we've been having about positivity and negativity prompted me to start doing some age specific research around the prevalence of negativity in a given population. And so obviously I was looking at the over 55 population. And to say that I was shocked to discover how prevalent negativity is, how damaging it is, would be a grand understatement. Found out that by this research, although you start looking for negativity, and the next thing you know is you've got other keywords that you're going down the rabbit hole pursuing. But they were talking about that one of the number one issues for people over 55 is loneliness. And loneliness gives very quick rise to negativity. And then the negativity leads to all kinds of aggravated medical conditions, if not new medical and mental health sorts of conditions as well. So I was, again, surprised, but shouldn't have been, to find out that 28% of the over 55 population, not just in these kinds of communities where they would at least be at a bit of a potential advantage because there is an established community, but I'm talking about nationwide now. Nationwide, 28% of everybody over the age of 65 live alone. Now, that number is scary enough. But when you find out that the reason why they live alone is because the vast majority of them have lost their loved one. And
Mhm.
so they're dealing with those issues, and they are living alone and whatever else, is going on around all that. Does that number surprise you guys at all, or does that speak to you in any way?
I think it's interesting, actually. I think I read a public health table one time. It said I think 1 out of 4, 55 and over, or it titled senior citizens. I didn't know you was a senior at 55.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. There you
but
go.
it said,
AARP wants you. So,
right, that they live in rural areas in the
mm,
United States. And I thought that was interesting because it was accounting for the lack of Medicare reimbursement, or how Medicare reimbursed differently in rural areas than urban areas because of volume. So that means that they're not getting the care that they need. And relationships is one of those social factors that they look at in terms of longevity. And so that's why they're often connected to some kind of social worker.
and unfortunately, that social worker is spread thin as far as population. And because the population is widely distributed, how does that affect efficiency of delivering
Exactly.
services, et cetera? So yeah, so point is, I think it's a really big issue. And um, call me mercenary if you must, but wherever there's a big issue, there's a big opportunity. And so most of us on the call are of that over 50, at least, maybe 55. I mean, I think, Brian, you're the baby. So how old are you?
52.
You're 52. Okay. So if I think about all the people we currently have in our certified community, I think we're all like 50 and older. So the question I wanted to throw out to everyone is, how long would you like to be able to continue delivering billable services? So do you guys think at some point in time you're going to retire and be done with it? Or are you going to have your business just continue until the day you can't? Or are you going to let your business kind of morph into some other kind of practice that you can continue? What are you guys thinking around that?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be happy to go. You know, it's interesting. My wife recently bought a business called American Settlement Centers,
Yes.
and it's all about mediation and arbitration. And so her goal is to get sufficient people certified and capable in delivering service to be able to create some passive income.
Hmm.
I may help her work with that.
Right. And so now you're managing a business as opposed to having to go out and find your own clients and deliver the services and do whatever the.
Well, I may go out and find some arbitrators and facilitators. I haven't, put that possibility out of mind. I can certainly have that conversation with them, and if I know they're certified, then it's more a matter of, do
Mhm.
we have an interest?
Right, 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 right. Um, and so, Brian, how about you? Edie, how about you?
I think the retirement in popular culture to me doesn't fit. Like, I did join AARP and I throw most of the newsletters out just because it just doesn't seem to fit me.
Right.
That whole mindset. Like, for me, I'm I'm always looking for ways that I can contribute, whether that's through a paid engagement or volunteering. Back in Florida, I sat on 20 boards. So, I'm always looking for ways that I can contribute. I don't think that's going to subside just because I get to a certain age. In fact,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think there's a burden to make sure that the younger generations and that I'm mentoring, that I'm somewhat available for them and
Yes.
helping them navigate the issues of the world that they might not necessarily understand.
Hmm. Hmm.
I always see myself doing something. I can't always articulate as to what that looks like, but I'm always doing something. The business, I try to get things set up so it can take care of itself.
Excellent. And so it sounds like everyone has the intention to rewire rather than retire.
Right. That's a good, I like that.
Yeah, it's not mine. I didn't originate it, but I can't remember who did. But they refer to it as a rewirement instead of a retirement. Um, whew, my back really hurts at the moment. Um, so so another thing that happened while I was with Diane kind of got me thinking about this too. So while we were on this cruise, Diane delivered 40 hours of, now again, she's a clinical psychologist, but she did 40 client hours while we're in the middle of the ocean.
Wow.
Okay, Diane is like 72, maybe oh no, maybe she's 75, and she is out there delivering billable services. And her whole point is that when you do like what she does, which is very much what we all do as well, we're in a business that most of what we deliver is delivered in the form of conversation with somebody. Yeah, we might pull out a tool or give them a little test or whatever, but by and large, we are there informing them, educating them, supporting them, coaching them, that sort of thing. This is all conversational. And so Diane basically is this walking example of how you can continue to do meaningful work at a good billable rate, and do that for as long as you really want, and you can do it from anywhere. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, there's something to explore there. So thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And Brian, I have to say, well said. You know, I think you put it well. I mean, I think we all in this profession look for opportunities to make an impact,
That's right.
and I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What I like about what Diane does is she's playing the game, so to speak, at her on her own terms. And
Right.
so it's not burnout.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like she can still do what she loves doing, what she enjoys doing, and get fulfillment. That's the exact opposite of like the work model today. The
Yeah.
work model of today is about the hustle and you're always on. You don't have any respite, and that's what's causing all
Right.
this burnout.
Right.
Right.
Right. And I mean, I got to tell you, she's doing billable work while she's laying on a lounge chair in the solarium. I mean, I think that this is really good.
Yeah,
So all she
like that
needs is,
model.
she just needs a decent internet connection so she can do, whether she's doing a Zoom call or FaceTime or whatever. Obviously she's using one of those platforms whenever she's talking to somebody.
Yeah.
So, that just kind of made me go, you know what? I've shared with you guys that while I'm more than happy to certify another ChangeWorks professional, they have to find me. I'm really not, I don't, for whatever reason, I just don't have the energy, the whatever, to go out there and market more ChangeWorks certified professionals. So, somebody else can do that if they feel so inclined. There's great opportunity, obviously, plenty of people could benefit from it, and there's lots of money to be made from doing that. But what do I really want to do? And I keep getting back to this idea that what I really want to do is something that is simpler, that is more connected to individuals rather than to businesses or organizations,
Mhm.
and make a difference that way and make some money along the way. We're mostly retired, but I'll tell you, the moment you retire and you start to dip into what you've set aside, you kind of go like, why the hell am I dipping into what I've set aside? I'm not old enough to do that, and so you just go, no, 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 no. I still want to be, as long as I can generate, why shouldn't I generate? Hopefully you guys
Yep.
are along that same mindset.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah,
that being said, we don't have anyone to leave anything to. We don't have children. Um, so I would love to be one of those people who runs out of money the day they run out of life. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
but how do you plan for that? So, So I'm sharing all this just to kind of get back to this whole idea about, originally I wanted to market this as the oracle of the self, and come and learn more about yourself, and this tool is at the center of it, and on and on. And I believe that's still going to be the case. I just don't think that that's is going to be as powerful a front end as integrating this whole concept about negativity and toxic negativity, and how it impacts people in, well, I'm targeting this population. I'll tell you the reason why I'm targeting my own populations is because I understand it. It is large and established. There are, I don't begin to know how many over 55 communities there are all across the country. But to say that there are dozens of them, if not a couple of hundred of them, I don't think that's an exaggeration. So
Mhm.
abundant opportunity with people who have an existing and growing need as they age, um, who are physically experiencing the consequences of a negative mindset or a negative lifestyle, and have the disposable income to make a little bit of an investment in their own wellness and their own mental health, etc. So
Mhm.
I think it is a really not only good population to target from a business perspective, it's also a really good population to target because of the need that exists. And I'll add to that the fact that all of us, as we get older, get increasingly exposed to the negativity that people in our own generation are carrying. And so if we want to minimize that, why don't we just do what we can do to fix it to begin
Mhm.
with? So so that's basically my thought, is like, rather ultimately it's still going to get back to the change grid, because to me everything is about tension management. As we've been talking about negativity and positivity these past few weeks, and went about overlaying it on the change grid, I think it's all pretty obvious that it resonates very nicely. We've obviously, the diagram on the screen is just arbitrary, but we know it's there. So so what do you guys think about talking to the public about negativity, its prevalence, its consequences, and then offering them a gathering that they could come to, that I've actually already copyrighted this, and I've got the URL and all that sort of stuff, but positively living. Because
Mhm.
I'd like to be able to say, you want to live your life in a way people talk about, you want to live it mindfully, you want to live it deliberately, intentionally. And so I
Mhm.
like this idea about positively living. I also wanted to keep it in the verb form, so I needed an adverb. um, so that's why it's positively living instead of whatever. So people say, like, how are you doing? We are positively living. That's what we're doing, positively living. So I
I think
thought,
it's
well,
brilliant.
if we could create a little bit of buzz, and get some people to come to this, it then becomes very easy to introduce them to the change grid. Obviously, we should have some sort of a ChangeWorks profile put together about how people go about dealing with the negativity in their own life and the negativity they encounter as they live that life. Um, so I can kind of see how it's all going to still get back to the oracle of the self. It's just really a different front end. Any thoughts about that?
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I just signed up for a storytelling class because I always
Mm,
feel like all these ideas I have in my head, and I'm a journaler, so I keep different journals. I have a vision journal. I don't think I do a good job with articulating them.
mm,
The power of that is if you look at these movements and people want to join these communities, particularly peer-to-peer communities and these movements. And I remember, as you just described, the vision, there was a movement, I don't know if they're still active, but it was called LOHAS, LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. They used to talk about exactly what you just described about how to live positive, positively.
yes.
And it was around the ideas of health and sustainability, like what helps that? How deliberate do you need to be? Do you want to be? What does that look like when you carry it with you? So it's almost like in the Karate Kid movie where it says kung fu's in everything that you do.
Yeah. It is still very active. LOHAS, Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability, is a demographic defining a particular market segment related to sustainable living, green ecological initiatives, and generally composed of a relatively upscale and well-educated population segment.
Yeah, that movement started with just what you described. It was a meeting.
Mhm.
Then they had summits and they had all these speakers come in. But it was real. It was started at a meeting at I don't remember the university, but it grew to be a really big movement because people were aligned with this idea of the narrative of what they said that health and sustainability could look like.
Yes. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, very interesting. Yep, still they're very active out there. Okay, so this idea about using this front end of negativity and all that, and ultimately inviting people to a gathering. Now, I'll just jump ahead and tell you what my big picture for the whole thing is ultimately you use the word movement, and that's exactly what we wrote on our little brainstorm. We said we really would like to not really create a movement as much as we'd like to initiate a movement, and have people, if you look at the different levels of membership we have for the Oracle of the Self or for the ChangeWorks community, one of them is this peer facilitator sort of a thing. And right now on the website, it says coming soon, because I never knew what to do with it. But I think that what that really would be is saying, look, it's great to have physical gatherings, but there is a capacity issue. We're talking about this being grassroots. Well, how many people do you think would be at a given meeting before you say, okay, this one's kind of full, we need more people running more meetings so they can do it more local and on and on. And we're kind of thinking that the upper limit would be a couple of dozen people. I mean, who's got the space for more than that? And I have no intention of trying to commandeer space or find volunteer space. I'm sure there's organizations that might let us do that. But the whole point here is it's supposed to be a grassroots kind of a movement with peer group counseling and awareness of all that happening. Now, ultimately, of course, we believe that peer group activity leads to billable opportunities because there's always issues that people aren't comfortable talking about with their peers, but they would be comfortable talking about that with their group leader. And if that group leader is trained and certified as a coach or a therapist or whatever, great. It's a way to help them expand their practice. So that's kind of like what the bigger view is on the whole thing. So yeah, any thoughts about you want to throw out as I'm describing this?
There was a
So
guy, I don't remember his name. He started these dinners I think his last name is Levi, I think. But he started these dinners in his apartment in his flat in New York, and they became very popular. And then it expanded from there. But they were meeting around different concepts. So, like, there's a concept actually called Positive Organization Scholarship, POS. And that's
mhm.
based on the whole idea of like understanding what the best uh, representation of the human condition looks like. And they
Mhm.
facilitate these conversations around, food and people are eating and connecting with others. And it just grew from there.
Yeah. And see, that's my thought. So we've already chosen the date for the first one in January. We're hand selecting people to come to it that we know are of this mind set and would be able to. Chris, the next one, I'm going to tell them to bring somebody with them. Now, this goes back to something I did when I first moved to Ann Arbor many years ago. You guys know I'm more reclusive than anything else, but I wanted to make some friends. And so I decided to create a little party called The Most Interesting Person I Know. And so I invited a handful of people that I considered to be the most interesting people I knew. And we had a lovely little evening. And then I said, okay, next time we get together, we were doing this monthly. I said, I'd like each one of you to bring the most interesting person you know. And the month after that, everybody brought the most interesting person they knew. And so over the course of time, this grew into something of such size that it was not really feasible to do it in any one particular location anymore. But it was interesting how quickly it formed. And I think how positive it was of an experience for someone to know that they've been chosen by someone because that person thought you were the most interesting person they know.
Mm.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to do that, and I'd like to use that same kind of viral way to expand this. So we would say, bring the most positive person you know, bring the most positive person you know, bring the most positive person you know. And so ultimately, we thought, wouldn't it be great to create a community of very positive people? And from that community, let friendships kind of form. Because I got to tell you, living in a community like this, if you go to someone's house for dinner, I promise you that the conversation is all going to be about either politics or it's going to be about people's aches and pains and illnesses and injuries and joint replacements and on and on. That's what it's going to be. To me, neither of those are positive conversations to have. Even when you get people of the same belief system when it comes to politics, it seems to get very upgrid very quickly. And we're trying to stay out of that upgrid area. So I throw that out because one thing I'd really like your guys' input on is, what do you think the guidelines should be for a gathering? So what do you kind of put out to people to say, look, this is okay, this isn't okay, this is what this group is for, this is what it's not for. So this belongs here, this doesn't belong here. And I'll set it by saying that I do want everyone as they come to this kind of group to know, we know that what we're doing is very constructed. We know that in the real world, we are surrounded by all kinds of things that one could frame as negative, hopefully logical negative assessment, not negativity. So we want to talk about negative things exist. Negative responses to things is optional. And so we want to say, what we want to do is to create a once a week opportunity for people to come into this controlled environment and experience 90 minutes of positivity. And there's exercises. We put together a whole battery of exercises and things like that. But so anyway, I'm just curious, what kind of rules do you think we should set for people? So guidelines for a gathering, what do you think?
Hmm. Well, I think the classics have to apply. I mean, politics, religion, and race are.
Right. We don't talk about those things. Yeah. Because weren't we all raised to not talk about those things?
I would hope that if anything came up, it would be, constructive, not diminishing. We don't want to completely ignore reality, but that's not the purpose of why we're together.
That's right. That's right. And so as we start to do this, I'm going to believe that there's going to be negativity is going to creep in because of that's just the way life is. So I want to be able to empower everyone with the expectation that if they encounter negativity, they're going to immediately identify it and try to reframe it or something like that, because we talked about this before. Negative people don't realize they're being negative. So awareness is the first step on the road to recovery. So how do we make people aware of it? I remember, go ahead. Yes, go right ahead.
As an OT, we used to do something, and even as a corporate trainer, I have these little sponge balls, and if somebody's being negative, you throw it at them, and it's a way of bringing fun and playfulness.
Yes.
And then they have to reframe it. So then everybody kind of laughs, and it doesn't get tense, and it works very well. It really does.
Okay, good. That's wonderful. That's really wonderful. I
Can you
remember
give an
doing
example of
one.
that, Edie?
No, go
What
right
was
ahead.
that?
Can you give an example of that?
So if we're talking and somebody breaks the rule and starts saying, look, where they're attacking the person and it's not open communication and they're shutting it down and saying you're just a Republican or that's how all you liberals think, then everybody can throw these little sponge balls at you to make you aware it's kind of a red flag, and it opens it up to reframe it, or other people can then participate and suggest ways of reframing it, because that person honestly may not know how, you
Right.
know?
That's
Yeah.
right.
But it
It's
adds
also
fun.
the
Everybody, it unifies the group,
It,
actually.
it does. In that particular example, it also gives us an opportunity to teach people that a lot of times negativity is packaged in these, we've talked about these before, the linguistic violations. That particular example that Edie gave was an example of a global quantifier or a universal quantifier when they say all or every. And you want to say, look, I don't care what a particular set of thoughts happens to be or a set of beliefs. Not all people in a particular population share that. So stop lumping people all together into this all, everyone kind of category, and realize you're just talking about specific people who have expressed specific thoughts, feelings, beliefs, attitudes. And so it gives us an opportunity to educate. Another example, and the one I was going to throw out, and this goes back to an exercise we did for IBM. This involved safety pins. And so we gave everybody a little strip of 5, a chain of 5 safety pins that they would put on their shoulder, just clip it on there. And anytime someone used a negative phrasing of something, we would say, now you have to give them one of your safety pins. So if they were really negative and didn't pick up on the whole issue, then they would end up with a very long chain. Now they could reduce the length of the chain by giving someone some positive feedback. So every time positive feedback was given, they could get rid of one of these things. And so the goal was for you to have no safety pins left by the end of it, but and have no one to ultimately give them to. Although, how did that work? There was something we did that when you ran out of people to give things to, you could just throw one away or whatever. I forget. Anywho, but it was all about words like "I can't" or "we shouldn't." These are global operators. No, that's what they're called. Modal operators of possibility and modal operators of necessity. And they imply that boundaries exist where no boundaries probably do. So again, I'm bringing this up just to say that we don't want to have rules that just make people feel like they're negative. We want to make sure we could also use it as a bit of an opportunity to educate.
Right. So, have you thought about doing maybe a manifesto of some sort that just really shapes the why this is important at this point in time as we keep transitioning and going through these transitions? And there's so much uncertainty in terms of post-COVID, new variants, the great resignation, the big quit, all these different things. There's a professor that said he called this period the great reprioritization. Because people are reprioritizing the ABCs, their attitudes, beliefs, and commitments about work and life, about life in general. So maybe a manifesto that just simply lays the groundwork. It's not saying, hey, these are the rules, but this is the value and benefits that we're trying to cultivate by creating these communities of positivity.
I love that. The thing I would like to add to it is, what's the neurotransmitter side of things? Because my whole thought is that if I can give people a 90-minute positive experience, they're going to leave with a very different brain chemistry than they arrived with. And that chemistry is going to impact their day. And if we can do it often enough, maybe there can be a real sustained improvement. Because positivity, negativity, whatever, I believe these are more states of neurochemistry
Right, they're short term, so like then that's why it requires like a consistent uh connection and loop. The thing about
Right.
like the stress hormones from the pituitary gland produces six, and that produces oxytocin.
Hmm.
So now think about the location of it. It's connected to it's in the deep in the midbrain near the brain stem that has access to the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the hippocampus, so long-term memory. So just reminding people have forgotten how to be positive because there's so much
That's
negative
right.
debating everything.
That's right. And that means that they are, how am I going to put this? And you can tell me if this is wrong, but they are ultimately changing the way a human is engineered.
That's
Because I have to imagine that generation upon generation of negativity ultimately impacts us at the genetic level.
absolutely, absolutely. You become desensitized, just like if a person is born in a war torn country, they become desensitized to certain aspects of violence when they see it. Whereas the person who hasn't, they hear a loud pop, they freak out.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep, 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 yep. Okay,
But I
let me,
think,
yeah, go ahead.
I think this goes into action. There's a guy in Scotland that wrote a book, Action Intelligence, and it's act the way you want to be and you'll be the way you act. I find as a therapist that this is where you have to get out of your own skin and your
Hmm.
own ego and identity. And that's where role playing. So you have people take on as if and another character or whatever. And there have been studies done that people who have acting in their background, like Reagan, tend to rise to the top and be more successful because they can play uh, a large repertoire of roles. And so the people that are stuck in negativity in their own identity of self will probably not change. You have to get them in that pattern of a new behavior, and you do that by having them take on a new role. That's what at least I find
Hmm.
to be effective.
Hmm.
Yeah,
What's interesting, because Edie, what you're describing would probably involve, since I've got this diagram on the screen, I might as well refer to it at least once. Maybe we're saying that the way you remedy those kinds of situations is by getting people to step outside of what
exactly.
they're currently thinking and feeling. That would move them into a place of neutrality. And from
Yes,
that place of neutrality, they're able to see other options
Hmm.
around
exactly.
them. And maybe they would favor then the positive one over the negative one. I've always said that negativity is a habit. It's a
Exactly.
bad habit, but
Yeah,
don't want
see,
to be
that's the
negative about it.
rewiring that you mentioned. That's the term. You're rewiring because what happens with behaviors, we don't necessarily get rid of them as it is that we replace them with a more dominant pattern. But the behavior is
Mm,
still there. It's just not dominant. And so again, that brings in the consistency and all these other kinds of things. But what people try to do when they're trying to change, they try to create behaviors and then habitize it when you have to get the routine down first and then operate from consistency. That creates the habit. So
mhm,
they're
mhm.
working backwards, and that becomes the challenge of why the long-term change doesn't happen the way that they anticipate because they don't have the routine down. So you get them out of that negative pattern as Edie described. They're in neutrality. Then you build them back up with something new. You're
That's right.
reminding them of who they are. I've
That's
always
right.
the
Mhm.
difference between fixing something and reminding people of who they already
That's
are
right.
from
That's
the inside
right. And see, again, that's where this whole movement up ultimately gets back to the oracle itself, this idea about practicing the art of caring detachment. So you can see things more clearly, you can see more options, you can make better choices moving forward. So yeah, I think this is really good. But my question was, this seems I'm of I'm quickly coming to the belief that this is a better front end for ultimately building the business side of things. Again, call me mercenary, but ultimately, I would like to see this be somewhat monetized. Certainly, there's never going to be a charge for people coming to a gathering. I mean, I think that needs to be just a community kind of a thing, and it's all open and give people some education. I think that's all fine and dandy. But to Edie's point a little earlier, there is some deeper levels of learning that I believe a certain percentage of the people who come to these gatherings might want to go for. So maybe we do offer a course in positively living, and that does a much deeper dive into the awareness, the techniques, all that sort of stuff, where we'd like the gathering itself to be very light and positive. The whole point of it being, this is a place where positive people can find other positive people and escape from the routine negativity happening in the world around them. I think that's what we really want to say, is creating this space where positively gets reinforced, has an opportunity to grow, etc. So that's my spirit there.
You can even do it from the point where I think that people are demonstrating that, like
Mhm.
that's Golden, who's the guru of gurus in terms of marketing. He created this online program called the Alt MBA. And the
Mm.
challenge was, because this whole thing is about refashioning the whole education system. So when you meet in this Alt MBA, which I think is a 12-week or so program, you literally put projects out in the world
Mm. Mhm.
on what you demonstrated or what you learned. There are no lectures. You have curated content. You meet with your cohorts and you put a project out. And so they've been collecting this. And so now you have this whole tapestry of all these different projects that people are putting out when they came together. And then that creates a whole different aspect of social proof that, hey, what we're diving into, we took a 12-week deep dive into all of these concepts. And now here's the finished product of that. What if we did that for positivity?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think we can harm the world by trying to expand positivity as a movement. So two last things I want to just throw at you guys. The first one is, what do you think happens to us if people as individuals are becoming increasingly negative? Toxic negativity is on the rise, and these negative people end up running businesses. How does that affect the business? What if these people end up becoming involved in a leadership role for some kind of an organization? What if they become our political representatives? What happens when politics is driven by negativity?
Mhm.
So obviously we can see a lot of stuff that might happen and the consequences that might come our way, but we need to restore positivity if anything is ever really going to change. And I guess one of the reasons why I'm putting it out there, and again, I'm not a sports fan, but somewhere someone told me that it's impossible to win a game if you are only on the defense.
Mhm.
That sooner or later you have to stop just protecting yourself and protecting others, and you have to become more of an instrument of whatever that change. You have to go on the offense in your if you can actually ever win. I don't know that we're ready to do that yet, but I'm hoping it's just going to be a natural thing that occurs as people become increasingly reinforced in their positivity and are able to more clearly see negativity around them and establish and enforce boundaries around allowing that negativity into their reality. Maybe that's where things become a little bit more proactive to expand the positivity. Thoughts about that?
I like that idea because I think it promotes the proactive versus reactive. Because right now, the negativity that incubates communities, societies, government, institutions, people are not positioned to create any condition that increase the probability of success. They're doing the exact opposite. So they go against the grain of self, they go against the grain of others. No one fits the mold, is tribalistic.
Yep,
None
yep,
of
yep.
that's not a sign of any positivity anywhere. So it's not that positivity becomes the panacea for everything, but
No.
I think it creates the conditions for to be more proactive. And even if you
Yes. Yep.
disagree with someone else, okay, yeah, let's figure out this common ground here.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Something
Yep.
like that. I think that's
And
what's
I
missing.
think part of what I'm talking about, this whole energizing people to become a little bit more active at the right time or whatever, is because how many positive people out there right now are retreating into neutrality, toxic neutrality, just deciding not to get involved, or even comforting themselves with toxic positivity, saying like, the things that are good outweigh the things that are bad. I'm just going to focus on the good sorts of things.
Yeah.
Because if the positive people, the real agents for change, get, what do we say, stuck at this work zone between positivity and negativity, there's work to be done. They have to overcome toxic positivity in order to ever have a positive impact on the negativity around them.
Hmm.
Does that make sense, or am I just like making stuff up now as I go along? So
Hmm.
yeah. Okay. Last thing I want to leave you with is that I tend to watch TV programs on the internet, and so I've been watching one program recently, and it's one of these things where they force you to watch regular old commercials. So, but there's this commercial. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a short commercial where there are two kids, maybe 5, 6 years old, something right around there, and they're sitting at a table, and the little boy is looking at the little girl, and the little girl is saying, you can do anything, you're great just the way you are. She's just giving him all of these very positive affirmations. I don't even remember what the product is or why they're doing this, but she's just giving him one affirmation after another, one acknowledgement, one little positive stroke after another. And I know the kid is an actor. The little boy is an actor, just like the little girl is. But the response you see from that little boy in his eyes, you know those messages got into his heart. So acting or not acting, I believe what we're watching in this thing, like his face just beams. He suddenly is filled with this sense of real pride that he recognizes he has value. And I don't think it's just because that's what he was supposed to do because the director told him to. I believe those messages had that impact on him genuinely.
Hmm.
So if you happen to stumble across that commercial, I'd love to hear what your insights are around it. Yes, final thoughts?
Yeah, I've seen that commercial, and I believe it's for something to do with healthcare.
Oh, okay, good. All right. So yeah, yep, wellness or whatever. That would be good. But do you notice the expression on the little boy's face, dear? When
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's absolutely genuine. So he's not acting in that moment. He's having a genuine response to those kinds of messages being given to him.
I think
Other
there's a lot of messages in that commercial. If little children can be this joyful
Yep.
with each other, do you know what I mean? That what I took from it is that why can't we all be more like these little children?
That's right. That's right. And
Like,
by the way,
how shall lead them?
Hmm.
yes. Yeah. Yeah. And bring this full circle. The over 55 community, again, is being consumed by all this negativity. And one of the things that I find myself saying to my contemporaries here all the time is that we each have only one life and none of us know how much of it is left. Let's fill it with joy. So if something you are doing in the moment isn't bringing you joy, then don't do it. And if you have to do it, don't delay doing it. Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
So that the dread of doing it, which is negative in and of itself, doesn't have a chance to rob you of that joy. So we all only have one life. Fill it with as much joy as you possibly can.
See, that's that health span. Because
Yeah.
I even seen the research that said the human body can last lifespan wise to, I think Swedish research just came out and said 130. I remember seeing 120.
Yeah.
But my point has always been, okay, that's great if we can live that long. And we certainly have a lot of pre-medical or predictive medical technology that's already out to help. But my point has always been, what's the point of living to 120 if their quality of life sucks?
Exactly. Right. Right. Yeah, in fact, the show that I was watching through forward, this guy had decided to have a lot of CRISP technology or CRISP infusions or whatever, trying to change his genome or whatever it was. And he ended up hurting himself. So never mind all that. But his whole point was he wanted to live to be 1,000. And all I could think of was, oh, why? Why? Who wants to be 1,000? I don't, I mean, maybe 100 would feel like a little bit of an accomplishment, but to Brian's point, just because you made it, or how about because you lived a life that at 100 years old, you're still actively involved and engaged and living life. That's different than just enduring and
Yeah.
lasting. Yeah, there you go. Okay, anyway, there you are. Thank you all so much for your feedback. I'd be very curious to hear from you about your thoughts based on what we've shared about how might you be able to boost the positivity aspect of the work that you do, and how might you help other people to get over whatever the negativity is before it gets too late. All right. So with that, thanks all very much for joining in. Have a lovely weekend. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.